The entire village gathered beside the river. Some cried. Some prayed. Others quietly lowered their heads. The rescue team's leader slowly removed his cap before walking toward Miriam, a beautiful 28-year-old African schoolteacher. His voice trembled. We searched for 7 days. The helicopter. The river. The mountains. I'm sorry. We couldn't find your husband. The world around Miriam became silent. Her husband, Daniel, had disappeared while rescuing children trapped during a devastating flood. His body was never found. No grave. No goodbye. No final embrace. Only silence. Everyone told Miriam to move on. You're still young. You'll find someone else. Forget him. But every night, she still set 2 plates on the dinner table. She still slept on only one side of the bed. She still whispered, "Good night, Daniel." Then, exactly 1 year after he disappeared, she made herself one promise. Every single day, she would write 1 letter to the man she still loved. Not because she believed he was alive, but because she refused to let love disappear without a goodbye. For 365 days, rain or sunshine, sickness or exhaustion, she walked to the same old red postbox at the edge of the village. Every letter ended with the same sentence. If you can somehow read this, please know I never stopped waiting. The villagers called her crazy. Children whispered whenever she walked past. Even the mail carrier stopped asking questions. Then, on the 365th day, as Miriam reached into the old postbox to leave a final letter, her hand touched something unexpected. An envelope. Not hers. Someone had written back. Her heart stopped. Her fingers trembled. With tears filling her eyes, she slowly turned the envelope over. Across the front, written in neat handwriting, were 7 words that changed her life forever. Your letters saved me, not your husband. The rescue helicopter circled above the raging river one final time before slowly turning back toward the city. Below, dozens of rescue workers stood silently along the flooded riverbank. Broken trees floated through the muddy current while pieces of destroyed homes drifted downstream. Captain Samoa removed his rescue helmet and walked toward a young woman standing alone beneath the pouring rain. Her name was Miriam Okoye, a beautiful 28-year-old African schoolteacher whose warm smile had once brightened every classroom she entered. Today, that smile was gone. Captain Samoa struggled to speak. We searched every village. We searched every cave. We searched every kilometer of the river. His voice broke. I'm sorry. We couldn't find Daniel. Miriam stared into the violent water without blinking. Her husband, Daniel Okoye, a 31-year-old firefighter and rescue volunteer, had disappeared 3 days earlier while saving children trapped inside a school during the worst flood the country had seen in decades. Witnesses said Daniel rescued 11 children. When he went back for the 12th, the building collapsed into the river. Nobody ever saw him again. Nobody was found. No funeral could be held. No final goodbye was possible. Only silence remained. The weeks that followed felt endless. Friends visited every day. Family members brought food. Neighbors prayed with her. But everyone repeated the same painful sentence. You have to move on. Daniel wouldn't want this. You're still young. You deserve another chance. Miriam smiled politely every time. But every night, she placed 2 plates on the dinner table. One for herself. One for Daniel. She folded his favorite blue sweater every Sunday. She watered the small mango tree they had planted together behind their tiny house. Before sleeping, she gently touched his pillow and whispered, "Good night, my love." Exactly 1 year after Daniel disappeared, Miriam walked to the old wooden bridge where they had shared their first kiss. She carried a notebook in her hands. Inside was a letter she had spent hours writing. She read it softly. Dear Daniel. Today the mango tree finally gave its first fruit. I wish you could have tasted it. The children at school still ask about you. Your mother still cries every Sunday. I still wear my wedding ring. And I still love you. Tears quietly rolled down her cheeks. She folded the letter. Walked to an old red postbox near the bridge. Placed it inside. Then whispered, I don't know where you are. But if heaven has a mailbox, I hope this reaches you. That night she made herself a promise. She would write one letter every single day. For 1 year. The first month felt comforting. Writing made her feel close to Daniel. She told him everything. How her students were growing. How the village repaired the bridge. How his mother had started smiling again. How lonely the house felt every evening. The letters became conversations. Although no one ever answered. Miriam never expected one. She simply refused to let love disappear without words. Months passed. Rainy season returned. Then summer. Then winter. Every single morning before work, Miriam stopped at the same red postbox. Every single evening, she wrote another letter. Some were long. Some were only 3 sentences. Some were stained with tears. Every single one ended exactly the same. If somehow you can read this, please know. I never stopped waiting. Soon the entire village noticed. Children counted the days. Shopkeepers watched her pass every morning. Some smiled kindly. Others laughed. One afternoon 2 women whispered as Miriam walked past. She's writing to a dead man. Poor thing. She's lost her mind. Miriam heard every word. She simply smiled. Then continued walking toward the old mailbox. Because love didn't need anyone else's permission. Unknown to Miriam, someone else had begun visiting the mailbox. A thin 17-year-old orphan named Elias. Elias lived alone inside an abandoned railway warehouse outside town. His parents had died in a bus accident years earlier. He survived by washing cars, carrying groceries, and collecting scrap metal. Most nights, he went to sleep hungry. Some nights, he wondered whether anyone in the world would notice if he disappeared. One rainy afternoon, while searching for recyclable bottles near the bridge, he noticed several envelopes that had accidentally fallen behind the old mailbox. Curious, he picked one up. It wasn't sealed. He hesitated. Then quietly opened it. Dear Daniel. He expected romance. Instead, he found hope. Miriam wasn't writing about sadness. She was writing about courage. About forgiving people. About helping strangers. About believing tomorrow could still be beautiful, even after losing everything. Elias read every word. When he finished, he cried for the first time since burying his parents. He carefully returned the letter. The next day, another letter appeared. Then another. And another. Without Miriam ever knowing, Elias began reading every letter that accidentally slipped from the old mailbox before placing it safely inside. Those letters slowly became the family he no longer had. Whenever he wanted to give up, he remembered one sentence Miriam wrote again and again. The darkest night still ends with sunrise. He wrote it on the warehouse wall. He repeated it every morning. Eventually, he returned to school. He studied harder than ever. He won scholarships. He volunteered at orphan centers. He promised himself that if a stranger's words could save one broken teenager, he would spend his life saving others. Finally, the 365th day arrived. Miriam sat beside her window until sunrise writing her final letter. Her hands trembled. Dear Daniel. Today is letter number 365. Everyone says this should be my last. Maybe they're right. Not because I've stopped loving you, but because you've already taught me enough to live the rest of my life. If love truly survives forever, then goodbye isn't the end. Thank you for every beautiful memory. Until we meet again. Your wife, Miriam. She folded the letter carefully, placed it inside a white envelope, walked one final time toward the old red mailbox. The morning air was completely silent. Birds sang softly in the trees. She smiled through tears. This is the last one. She reached forward to place the envelope inside. But suddenly, her fingers touched another envelope already waiting there. She frowned. Slowly, she pulled it out. It had no stamp, no address, only her name. Miriam. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten page. Only one sentence appeared. Your letters didn't reach your husband, but they saved my life. Miriam stared at the letter as tears blurred the words. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely breathe. She looked around the empty bridge. There was no one. Only the gentle wind moving through the old trees. Her trembling hands unfolded the second page hidden inside the envelope. It read, My name is Elias. You don't know me. For 1 year, I secretly read every letter you wrote. I know I should apologize. But if I hadn't, I wouldn't be alive today. Miriam covered her mouth. Her legs became weak. She slowly sat on the wooden bench beside the mailbox. The letter continued. 5 years ago my parents died in a bus accident. After they were buried, nobody wanted me. I lived inside an abandoned railway warehouse. Some nights I slept without food. Some nights I prayed not to wake up. Then one rainy afternoon, one of your letters fell behind the mailbox. I picked it up. That single letter saved my life. Tears rolled down Miriam's face. She continued reading. Every day afterward, I waited for your next letter. You thought you were writing to your husband. But your words became the family I no longer had. Whenever I wanted to give up, I remembered something you wrote. The darkest night still ends with sunrise. Because of you, I went back to school. Because of you, I earned a scholarship. Because of you, I believed my life still mattered. If you wish to meet me, I'll be waiting tomorrow. At 4 o'clock. Under the old mango tree beside the orphanage. Thank you. For saving someone you never knew. The next afternoon, Miriam arrived 30 minutes early. She wore the same blue dress Daniel had always loved. Her hands trembled as she waited beneath the old mango tree. Children laughed nearby. Birds sang softly. Then, she saw him. A tall young African man slowly walked toward her carrying a worn leather backpack. His eyes were kind, but filled with years of loneliness. He stopped a few feet away. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Elias smiled nervously. You really came. Before Miriam realized what she was doing, she stepped forward and hugged him. Both of them began crying. I thought, Elias whispered, you would hate me for reading your letters. Miriam gently shook her head. If those letters saved your life, then they reached exactly where God wanted them to. They spent hours talking. Elias told her everything. How he survived alone. How he washed cars before school. How he studied under streetlights. How every scholarship application almost ended in failure. Until one teacher believed in him. Years passed. He graduated at the top of his university. then founded a humanitarian organization that built schools and orphan centers across Africa. Reporters often called him the young man who never gave up. But nobody knew why. Until now. Before sunset, Elias opened his backpack. Inside was a thick bundle tied with blue ribbon. Miriam gasped. Her letters. Every single one. All 365. Perfectly preserved. I couldn't throw them away, Elias smiled. They're the reason I'm standing here. Miriam slowly touched the worn envelopes. Some still carried tear stains. Others had faded from time. She realized. The words she thought had disappeared into silence had quietly built another human being. Over the following months, an unusual friendship grew. Every Sunday, Elias visited Miriam. They cooked together, planted flowers, read old letters, laughed, sometimes cried. For the first time since Daniel disappeared, the little house felt alive again. One evening, while drinking tea on the porch, Elias quietly asked, "Can I tell you something?" Miriam smiled. "Of course." He lowered his eyes. "I've spent my whole life wondering what it feels like to have a mother." Silence filled the evening air. "I know we aren't related. But..." He stopped speaking. Emotion closed his throat. Miriam gently placed her hand over his. "You don't have to finish." She already understood. A month later, Elias invited Miriam to the city. "I have somewhere I'd like to take you." When they arrived, hundreds of people filled a beautiful auditorium. Teachers, volunteers, children, journalists, community leaders. Everyone stood as Miriam entered. Confused, she looked toward Elias. He walked onto the stage, took a deep breath, then smiled. "Everything I am today started with one woman." He pointed toward Miriam. "I lost my parents. I lost hope. I lost my future. But every day, a stranger unknowingly wrote me a reason to live." The audience fell silent. Elias slowly walked down from the stage. Then, to Miriam's complete surprise, he knelt before her, holding legal papers. With tears streaming down his face, he asked, "Miriam, I know I can never replace Daniel. And you can never replace my parents. But if love makes a family, will you allow me to become your son?" The entire hall burst into tears. Miriam couldn't even speak. She simply pulled Elias into the tightest embrace of her life. "Yes," she whispered. "From today, I'll never let you feel alone again." Months later, the adoption became official. Newspapers across the country shared the incredible story. Not because of wealth, not because of fame, but because two strangers had become family through words written in love. Together, they created something even more beautiful. An old abandoned post office was transformed into the House of Hope letters. People from every corner of the country came there. Widows, orphans, soldiers, parents, children, anyone carrying pain. Everyone was invited to write letters. To someone they missed. Someone they loved. Someone they never got to say goodbye to. No letter was ever judged. No tears were ever hidden. On the entrance wall, a simple sentence was carved into stone. Words written with love never disappear. They always find the heart that needs them most. Years later, a frightened little girl entered the center carrying a crumpled letter addressed to her late father. She quietly asked, "Does heaven really read letters?" Elias smiled. Then looked at Miriam. Miriam gently knelt before the little girl. I don't know if heaven reads every letter. She smiled through tears. But I know this. Sometimes, the person who needs your words is still here on earth. The little girl smiled for the first time in months. She placed her letter into the old red mailbox standing in the middle of the center. Miriam watched with tears of gratitude. She looked toward the sky and softly whispered, "Thank you, Daniel. I thought I was writing letters to say goodbye to you. But you were leading me to the sun I never knew I would have." As the evening sun filled the room with warm golden light, Miriam and Elias stood side by side, welcoming another family searching for hope. Because they had learned the greatest truth of all, love never disappears when it is given. It simply finds another heart to heal.